High Command had worked out each detail carefully. For weeks in advance of the attack, the Luftwaffe roared up and down the front, successfully camouflaging the sounds of troop movements and the grating noise of massing tanks. Artillery pieces were drawn into positions over roads covered with straw. The German offensive was spearheaded by the German 5th Panzer Army, under the command of General Hasso von Manteuffel.
The credit must go to Hitler for having personally planned the offensive with Jodl. Hitler needed a great victory in order to swing the tide in his favor. Besides, it would have a profound effect on both German and American morale. The plan was to push through to Liège, bypass Brussels, and seizing the port of Antwerp, which was at that point and that time in British hands. If successful, this move would effectively surround and capture at least, I think, 25 divisions. It was a brilliant plan, but it depended on an accurate timetable and unbroken sources of supply, and the key to it was surprise.
This is James Cassidy with the American First Army speaking from Belgium. This morning, official Army sources reveal that the powerful German attack launched this week has resulted in the cutting off of numbers of American troops near Saint-Vith, a Belgian town about 25 miles south of Ardennes. Our troops were caught in the German armored pincers, which has now carried the enemy to a point within 3 miles of Saint-Vith.
The town of Saint-Vith was the first major obstacle in the path of von Manteuffel's march to the west. The Germans used 6 divisions in a desperate attempt to take the vital rail and highway center. Against them stood a single American division, the 7th Armored. Its commander in Saint-Vith was General Bruce Clark.
20 years ago, and to look at Saint-Vith now, you would hardly realize that it ever happened. It was about 2:30 in the afternoon when somebody reported that Germans could be seen to the east. My general plan of defense in this area was to put only a minimum of troops to hold a few key positions along the front. I held a battalion in the center to the rear of Saint-Vith in a position from which they could counterattack in any direction on short notice. And I will say that this happened practically every 2 or 3 hours, day and night. Even though the men were operating under the most adverse conditions, their response to the situation was magnificent.
I was very astonished to find the 7th Armored Division in Saint-Vith. Saint-Vith had to be taken for the attack to succeed in the shortest possible time. The delay imposed here puts the entire German offensive 3 days behind the schedule. I didn't count on such stubbornness.
General von Manteuffel did not control the Saint-Vith area until the 23rd of December, when Combat Command B of the 7th Armored Division withdrew to the west of the Somme River on order from higher headquarters. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. The snow was 2 or 3 feet deep. The weather was 0. And probably the greatest contrast that I notice after 20 years is that as you talk to the people of Saint-Vith, the battle of 20 years ago was scarcely remembered.
Hitler had gambled on the element of surprise and won. His next gamble, another element, the weather. It had to remain bad if the attack was to succeed. On the 16th of December, the weather was bad. It was to remain that way for 6 days. With American fighters and bombers grounded, the forward thrust of the German offensive during those crucial first days moved along the broad front practically unchecked. In the north, an elite SS unit of Sepp Dietrich's 6th Panzer Army, known as Kampfgruppe Piper, pushed forward on its race along the main road to the Meuse River. On the morning of December 17th, the forward element of this Nazi machine passed a picturesque crossroad called Ligneville, 4 kilometers south of Malmedy. Soldiers of the United States Army who, while prisoners of war, were massacred by Nazi troops on this spot.
That name is misspelled. It should be Indelicato, Ralph Indelicato. Schingler, Sheets, Carl Ruman from my hometown. Walter Franz, he brought us through boot camp. Osborne was our mess sergeant. The name of the outfit was Battery B, the 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion. On December 16th, we were a couple of miles outside of Malmedy. We approached a crossroad, and I can recall the sign pointing to St. Vith. We proceeded on this road, and I guess maybe we had traveled a half a mile down the road when I heard some shooting, which sounded like machine guns. We saw some movement of German infantrymen in the woods in back of the farmhouse. I took cover behind a pile of logs. We had nothing but sidearms and rifles. We were forced to give up because at that point, I was looking down the barrel of an 88 mounted on a German tank. I threw my rifle down and crawled back onto the road. They lined us up on the road and marched us back towards the crossroads and assembled us near a field. I was one of the last ones to be shoved in the field. We stood there with our arms raised, wondering what was going to happen next. The German tanks were lined up on the road. One of the German tank drivers stood up on top of his tank, and he pulled out his pistol and fired a shot into the first row of our group. One of the boys dropped. He shot him in the head. Then the machine guns opened up. Then the machine gun fire stopped. and there was still a lot of moaning and groaning of guys who had been seriously wounded. I laid with my face buried in the ground. Then the German soldiers walked into the field, and I could hear single pistol shots. Those that had not been killed were shot in the head. Then it became quiet. I looked up to see if there was anybody else alive. When I got up, there were about 15 of us that were still alive, and we made a break for it. Some of the boys ran into a shed. I found out later that the Germans set fire to the shed and killed the fellows as they tried to run out. I myself ran towards the woods that was about 200 to 300 yards away. And now, 20 years later, these same Germans are free and walking the streets of Germany. 46 of these men were tried after the war and sentenced to death. 30 others got prison terms, but everyone was pardoned, and they're all free today. It all seems fantastic when you think of the number of Americans that were killed at Malmedy.